In this one of many possible worlds, all for the best or something.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to 2021, the year 2021. So we thought it would be a good idea to, because we're in a brand new year, to change up just for this episode and talk about usually we do songs we're currently hooked on or a deep track we want to give a shout out to. We thought for this episode, it being the first episode of 2021, to kind of recap or look back at the year 2020 and give you a song that we either discovered, a song that we kind of neglected forever and we finally listened to it, or a song that we rediscovered. It was one, as my cat just jumped up on top of my chair back there, a song that we used to like and we kind of didn't listen to it for however long, and then now we really love it again. So that being said, Jim, why don't you go first?
All right. I'm going with a song that I rediscovered, and that song is The Fountain of Lameth. When we did our Caress of Steel, side 2 album discussion, I listened to it a lot and just realized how much I really like it. And I say I rediscovered it because I probably haven't listened to it that much since high school. And just so some of you guys know, if you don't know, that was over 35 years ago. So it's been a long time since I heard it. So that is a rediscovery.
Do you think that you're going bald, though? Not yet?
Not yet. This is the same hairline I had when I was a senior in high school. So I think it's all right. Maybe a little further.
All right. So I'm going to go with a song that I kind of discovered / rediscovered. It was a song that I guess I kind of neglected, didn't really listen to often, but fell in love with it in 2020, and that's Freeze from Vapor Trails. It was a song that I was currently hooked on for probably a good 4 weeks back early 2020, and it's probably in my top 10 at this point. I freaking love that song. But I do want to give an honorable mention to The Twilight Zone, which, because of our song discussion on The Twilight Zone, I never really liked that song at all, and I found a newfound appreciation for it. So go back and give both of those two deep tracks a listen. Matt?
So yeah, my song is not one that I ever fell out of love with, so to speak, but it's one that I found myself listening to a lot more in 2020, and that's Everyday Glory off the Counterparts record, the last song. Jim just wrote a wonderful song discussion about it, so go check that out.
He did, yes.
It's fantastic. Good job. And I'll get more into, as we go on in the episode, why I chose that song, but Everyday Glory is it for me.
Alrighty, Pat.
So I'm going to go with We Hold On, because this really was a song that I always overlooked. And on the Snakes and Arrows album, I feel like it's a song that, like, it's not like one of the hit songs, like one of the great songs like Far Cry or, Working Them Angels. And then, when you talk about the underrated songs like, Good News First, those are the songs that you really talk about. And I feel like everyone, including myself, we kind of often overlook that song. And this year, I felt myself that I was listening to, like, more than usual. And I feel like I'm glad that I did start listening to it more, and I feel like I need to keep that up because, like, it truly is, like, it's beyond underrated. I feel like it should even be like a radio hit. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like just the way it's constructed, it's so, like, it sounds like a radio hit. Like, it's just perfect from start to finish. And I think it's a good song to end Snakes and Arrows in general. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's definitely a song that that I started listening to this year, and I'm going to continue to listen to way more.
It's definitely a good song
Nice.
for a pandemic too, I would say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Alex.
Well, this may shock some people, but my song is Tai Shan. No, I'm just kidding. It's not Tai Shan. No, I still don't like that song. I'm sorry. I tried, guys. I really did. But no, my song is it's Scars, actually, off of Presto. I really, really dig that song now. I think that's it's like within my top 3 off of Presto. Like, I really, really dig it. Like, it's just a very, you know, we always, among us, we always like to joke that Kira like dances to pretty much every Rush song. But for me, Scars is the closest Rush song, the closest Rush ever came to doing a proper dance song. It's really funky, and I love Peart's drumming on that song. It's just it's very atmospheric and cool. I dig it.
Awesome. So today's topic, today's Monday, January 4th. We're coming up on the 1 year, I guess, anniversary of Neil's passing. So we thought it would be a good idea to, pay tribute to him, remember Neil, and quite frankly, kind of give our perspective, each one of us, our perspective on that day that we all found out, which was January 10th of 2020. Kind of go through where we were when we heard the news, kind of what we were feeling, how we found out, I guess, and then kind of what we did personally to cope with it, because it really hit all of us pretty hard as Rush fans. And then after we go through that, we will kind of just talk about Neil, the drummer, talk about his life, and just pay tribute to him. So, Jim, take it away.
All right. So when I found out, I was, just to put it in a little bit of context. So right now I am a full-time middle school teacher. When I found out, I was substitute teaching, and I was in classroom. I was by myself, actually, and I got a text from a keyboard player, one of my bands, and he said, "Hey man, I'm so sorry, Neil passed away." And I looked at him like, "What? Like, is this really true?" Because I've actually been hearing this since I got into Rush back in 1982. There's been a rumor like almost every single year, Rush is not going to tour because Neil just died. This was like in the early 80s, and it just kind of like went forever. So of course I did not believe it at first. I thought, all right, this is some kind of hoax, or this is something that's not right. And then I got another text from another friend, and I was like, uh-oh. So I looked it up, and sure enough, he had passed away, and I guess I was in shock. So I had to finish the day. I think I had another period, so students came in. I had to do something, with them and everything. So I finished the day, of course, and then went home, and I was like, golly, this is unbelievable. So the first thing I started doing was just listening to more Rush, and really focusing on his lyrics, which is something that I focused on, lately anyway, but really focusing a lot more on his lyrics. And I did that for, I don't know, maybe a week or so. And then I watched his instructional video, a work in progress, because I'm a drummer. If people don't know that, I'm a drummer. So I have that. So I watched that instructional video, just of everything he's done. He talked about, reinventing his playing and studying with Freddie Gruber, how he changed his drum kit setup. And I watched it like really, really intently, and it wasn't really until then that I started to feel a lot more emotional about it. I think I was in shock for a lot longer than I thought I would have been. So I watched that, and then I started reading. Modern Drummer printed a tribute to him, and Drum Magazine had as well, and I read both of those. But the Modern Drummer was the first one that I read, and then when I read that one, that's when I started tearing, and like reading the letters from all of these drummers, and people in the music industry about what he brought, to drumming, to the music industry, and what kind of person he was. Really just basically being a super nice guy who was very passionate about his craft and wanted to move things forward and really cared about his fellow musicians, and very, very warm-hearted person kind of thing. That was essentially what everybody was saying. And so that's kind of how I dealt with it. And since then I've been listening to a lot of Rush, I guess. And I'll talk about it more in the next episode, is why his passing was so impactful to me. And the other thing I did, I guess I'll just say this one more thing. The other thing I did, and I almost never do this when we have like celebrities pass away, people wind up posting on their social media about that. And I think he was the first celebrity or the first musician who has passed away that I actually posted something about. That's how impactful his art and his approach was to me.
So you were in a classroom by yourself, you said, just alone?
Yeah, it was
I
an
can imagine that
off
was
period.
probably made it worse, right? Kind of just alone with your thoughts type of deal, and then
Yeah, alone with my thoughts, but then it gave me my time to sort of like, compose myself, so that when
that's
the
fair.
students walk in the room, they don't look at me and go, "Oh my gosh, what's wrong, Mr. Benner?"
Yeah, Mr. Benner,
Yeah.
Professor
I
Benner.
know.
So yeah, I mean, so I actually kind of had the complete opposite of that. I I was at work. It was a Friday. I think it was a Friday, right? It was a Thursday or a Friday. I
I
believe it
think
was
it
a
was
Friday.
a Friday. I think a Friday.
So it was a Friday, 4 o'clock p.m. on the East Coast, and so it was coming close to the end of the workday, end of the work week, and my buddy, one of my best work friends, was working from home that day, and this was January. We were all working from the office. We weren't working from home yet, pandemic. But he sends me a text and he says, or no, actually, I take that back. I do tech support. I was on a phone call at the time, and he called me on my cell phone. I was on my work phone. He called me on my cell phone. Of course, I didn't pick up because I was already on the phone. And then he sends a follow-up text and he says, "Did you hear that Neil died from Rush," or something along those lines? And as you can imagine, I'm on the phone talking to somebody, reading that text, and I'm just, my jaw just drops, like it kind of froze. Um, Fortunately, a minute or two later, I was able to get off that support phone call and do my research, and sure enough, Neil had passed. Rolling Stone, some credible sources found that out. And I kind of just sat there with my head down. It felt shock, obviously, but it felt like the loss of a family member, right? I mean, I think that's what a lot of people felt in a weird way, and I'm sure Neil himself would cringe at hearing that, but it's not like that. Like I never felt any personal connection to them, like as people, I guess, but it was just them, or Neil, just losing him, and not even knowing, like we weren't even prepared, right? Because nobody had any idea. So just the utter shock. Um, but then what Jim said, multiple texts. I mean, the text just flooded in, right? Everybody knows, oh, that's my Rush friend. That's that's my friend that is a huge Rush fan. So everybody texts him. I mean, everybody had that. So um, my boss knew that I was a huge Rush fan. He pretty much said to me, "You're good for the rest of the day. Like you physically need to be here because you have to be, but you don't have to do any work. Take the time." Like he knew that it affected me because he could probably read it on my face and my body language. But um, you're never going to believe this, but the way that I cope with it on the ride home from work was I put the Garden on. The first song that I put on was The Garden. And I felt that was appropriate because it was the last song that they ever wrote. And, it's just such a very fitting end to the band. And it's a tearjerker song. And I was sad and everything. but over the next couple of days, I grieved, or I coped with it, I guess, by and I didn't know two of you at the time, Jim and Matt. I knew Pat and Alex, but um, I I cope with it by just posting like a Rush song a day for almost a month, like a month. You know, I just cope with it, or even more than that, just posting Rush songs on my Facebook every day, to the point where I guess one of my best friend's girlfriends texted my wife. It's like, is Ryan okay? Like, is Ryan really okay that this Rush guy died? Like, I don't think they don't get it, right? They don't understand the bond that we kind of shared with the band and their music and that type of thing. Um, but yeah, I mean, that was my experience with it, and I remember writing the post on our fan page on Rush Fans on Instagram, and I mean, the first sentence that I wrote was, "This is the hardest post that I'm probably ever going to have to write." So, and I mean that rings true. So it was tough. It was a tough couple of months, for all of us, and quite frankly, a tough year. It's been tough since we lost Neil, but I think it was. Well, I guess I'll just say this now. The fact that actually, I'll save it. I'll save it. I'll save it till when we talk about his life, because it fits more into that. So that being said, Matt, I think I'm good. You can take
Okay.
over.
So I was sitting right here on my bed in my room listening to, a podcast or music or whatever. And my mom, who was at work, called me and said, you know, Neil Peart died. I was like, and I had the same reaction that Jim did. I was like, yeah, okay, it's a hoax. Like, can't, no. So I was like, okay, thanks for letting me know, basically. I kind of just got her off the phone because the first thing I wanted to do was look it up. So I did. I looked it up and came across those same news articles and was like, uh-oh. Ran upstairs, told my brother. We then got my dad on the phone, who was driving home from work, and told him. And obviously we were all pretty shocked. We had planned on, cooking dinner. We went out to eat because nobody wanted to do anything. Um, we got, my dad got home. He just put on, album after album. We must have listened to 6 or 7 albums that night, staying up till like almost 1 in the morning, just listening. Um, you know, and it was one of those things. I remember asking him like how he was doing, because my dad was really the lifelong Rush fan. Okay, I mean, I've been a Rush fan my whole life, but because of him, because he played the music and it was his favorite band, like, you know, his number one favorite band. And so he's like, I'm okay. He's like, it sucks, but and he did turn to me and kind of winked at me as he said, I'm not going to pretend he was a long-awaited friend, and then like went in to do something else. Like, yeah, that was the way that he was about it. Um, but when my dad passed away in May, that was a lot harder, obviously for me personally, for other reasons, but it sort of compounded, everything that I had been feeling about Neil passing, and then, you know, I guess I sort of held out hope, not that Rush would get back together, but that they, that Neil would write again, or, I really didn't hold out hope that he would drum again on a session because I just didn't picture him doing that. But I thought we might get some more Neil lyrics, on a very small chance. So that was not going to happen. And, I just found myself sitting around and I was like, you know what, like, uh, I'm a huge Grateful Dead fan as well, and they wrote, when you get confused, you listen to the music play. So I just listened and listened and listened. Um, and I rediscovered things, and albums like Hold Your Fire was in my Apple Music top 10 albums. That never would have happened 5 years ago. It just wasn't my cup of tea. But having gone through all the albums again, I found out that I really love a lot of the songs on there, specifically from, a songwriting lyric perspective. Um, and touching on what I said before about Everyday Glory, that song really, I mean, it still gets me. But I remember the first album we did listen to that night, the three of us, my dad, my brother, and I, was Counterparts. because it opens obviously with that iconic intro from Neil, and Animate, I think, is probably his tour de force on drums. It's one of my favorite drum parts on any song ever. And the whole record just goes right through, and it ended with Everyday Glory. And I remember just sitting there like, as that last line hit, I was like, wow, like it actually moved me. And I listen to so much music. Like I think I listened to probably 3.5 days worth of music last year, according to my, 2020 report. But so it doesn't often affect me. I'll be doing something or, just have it on in the background. But then it really did affect me. And that's, the beauty of technology and everything that we have is we'll always have the music. So I just kept that in my head, and that's what helped me get through.
Yeah. All right, Pat.
Yeah, all real touching stories so far. I really love it. I guess for my perspective, um, I it was January 10th we got the news, and on that day, me and a few of my friends flew into Florida because we were going to vacation for a week, and we got into our hotel. I put my stuff down, and the first thing I did, I don't know why I do this, but first thing I did was check Twitter, and I'm scrolling, and then I see a tweet from Peter Frampton, none other than Peter Frampton, who said, my heartfelt condolences on the passing of Neil Peart. Like, and I was like, wait, what? Like, wait, what? This must be a mistake. And then I'm like looking, and then like I'm checking the trend, like the trending tab, and there's nothing that's coming up. And I'm like, this is weird. And I think I either got a text from somebody talking about it, and that like confirmed it. And then I kind of was like, I felt like just confused, like all of you were. And then eventually it started, the news started pouring out on Twitter, and I was like, wow, this is real. And the first thing I did, as my other friends were unpacking, and it was the four of us. The two other guys didn't really know, but my friend James, he knew of Rush. He was a Rush fan, and I told him, I was like, yo, like Neil died. And he's like, what? I was like, yeah. And it kind of was a little quiet for a bit, and I kind of just sat down for a bit, and I was like, you know what, like it's part of life. I was trying to, I don't know, I don't know if I just kind of, you know, just tried not to think about it, or I kind of just like pushed it away. But I was like, I'm just not going to think about this right now. Like, I'm going to have a good time. Like, I just got here. I'm going to have a good time. And that's what I did. And then by the time I flew back, it kind of, the reality started to hit again. And this was like a week later. And it kind of like set in again, like how real this was. And I just like, a lot of you guys did, I started listening to the music. At first, like, I really didn't want to listen to any Rush. I was kind of, I kind of just didn't want to really, I just wasn't in the mood to get like that emotional, like just yet, even though, it was like 5 days later. But eventually I did. And I did get all emotional, and just that's what really made me accept that reality, like that had happened. And as Ryan, we talked about it in the group chat, we were talking about how unreal it was. And yeah, and then time went on, really. But it
Time did
really,
its healing.
yeah,
You've
it
got
really
to let it
did.
go. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, time went on, and now we're almost here a year later, and I'm sure obviously the feelings are coming back. We're all really going back to that first moment when we heard about it, so it's feeling kind of brand new again. But here we are a year later.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's good that you were able to kind of put it out of mind for your vacation. You didn't let
I
it
kind of
affect your
had to.
vacation. But
Yeah, I had to.
I mean,
But
the fact, I think a lot of people did this. They didn't listen to any Rush because they just couldn't. I was the complete
hard.
opposite.
It's
I
hard for some
I
people.
couldn't do that either.
Like I said,
I had to listen to it.
I
Yeah.
put on The Garden, like
Nice.
like people were saying that they still can't listen to that song. I mean, that was the first that was the first song I put on, and I haven't religiously listened to anything else other than Rush since. I mean, of course, you hear songs on the radio, but it's been nothing but Rush since for me.
Yeah.
And I mean, to your point on um, a couple other of you said that, you couldn't believe it at first. You thought it was a hoax or whatever. I mean, when I knew my buddy that texted me wouldn't have played me like that. So as soon as he said that to me, I knew, that's when I still needed confirmation, but the feeling hit me then. So, Alex.
Oh boy. Okay, so so like some of you, I was also at work when I heard the news. And funnily enough, I actually heard the news initially from you guys actually in our Facebook group chat that we have for the admins. I believe it was Chris who opened the conversation by saying, please, saying something along the lines of like please tell me this isn't true. And I think Pat said like, I'm afraid that it is. And then I was like, wait, without context, I'm like, wait, what are you guys talking about? And then like I just sort of decided just to do a little bit of detective work on Google, and that's when I saw the articles Neil Peart had passed away, and I was shocked. I will tell you that I was very, very shocked. And I always feel sad whenever there's a celebrity that I like that passes away. I always feel sad, but very few of them really get to me, their deaths. Neil Peart was one of them. His death had a very significant impact on me. And, when I heard the news, I knew I had to get out of work. I didn't know how I could continue on. And I feel bad for saying this, but I told like one of my boss, a friend of mine had passed away. Can I take the rest of the day off? And they're like, yeah, sure, that's fine. And so I feel bad for saying that, but then I went to my car, and funnily enough, Ryan, I did the same exact thing you did. I listened to The Garden. That was the very first song I listened to. And I always thought The Garden was just the perfect final song for Rush. And I'm like, I didn't really necessarily need any more Rush music after that, but I mean, I wouldn't complain if there was more Rush music because we all need more Rush in our lives, right? But I never actually cried during that song before. I always considered it a tearjerker song, even though I myself have never cried during it before. This was the first time I genuinely wept for The Garden, and I will never forget that. And just seeing the outpouring of like all sorts of fans and fellow musicians all across the world, like share their expressed like love for Neil, like what he meant to everyone. It's just incredible. And I spent the next several days just listening to all sorts of Rush music on shuffle, and just very randomly there's a lyric that will get to me like a couple days after I listened to How It Is, like foot upon the stairs, shoulder to the wheel, like that got me again just randomly. And I guess just a sort of segue into what his music meant for us. I mean, for his lyrics, like I would not be here if not for Rush. And I do mean I would not be here. Like I didn't have many friends growing up. Middle school was a challenging time in my life, but I always had Rush as a sort of booster pack for me. And flash forward to 2017, that was a very rough year for me as well. And so much happened to me that year, and just as a cherry on top, I almost died that year. And so it was just a very tumultuous year to say the least. But once again, I had Rush to listen to as well, and I sort of had a spiritual bond to the album Vapor Trails. And I've said in passing, like Vapor Trails is the very first album I ever bought. It was all thanks to this video game, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2. It featured One Little Victory, and who'd have thunk that was my gateway to Rush right there. But and there's a reason why Vapor Trails is consistently one of my personal favorite Rush albums, and I think it's just one of those albums that I relate to in a way. I mean, it's a very deep album. It's personal for Neil Peart. And, like I said, I wouldn't be here if not for Rush, but I think by that same token, I don't think Rush would have been here if not for Neil Peart. Just what he contributes to the band is just, he ultimately changed the band, both musically and lyrically. And his lyrics just had such an impact on my curiosity, my ambition, my pursuing of my passions, that I cannot conceive of my life without Rush's music. And I needed it, and I still do. So yeah.
Yeah. Rush is life for me, you know? I mean, it's really the only band I listen to. And even before Neil's passing, I mean, that's kind of how it was. I mean, I'll occasionally
Mhm.
listen to other bands, but Rush is it. I do want to touch on one thing. Obviously, I'm sure you guys have other things to talk about, but before I forget,
Mhm.
I want to say that, like, one of you guys mentioned, I think it was Pat, like, right, people die, that's life, like that type of thing happens, right? I don't think I was as sad at the fact, well, the initial shock, other than the initial shock, once I was able to collect my thoughts and everything, kind of put everything together full circle and having discussions with people, I think I was more sad for the fact that the band was done in 2015, right? The band, I guess, unofficially retired in 2015. To my knowledge, Neil was diagnosed with brain cancer just a year later, 2016. I could be wrong, but I think that's it. If not, it was very close
Mhm.
thereafter. Put this into perspective from someone who not necessarily not even a musician, just anybody who retires from work and they want to get, 15, 20 years with their kids and their grandkids or whatever. A year after they're done retiring, he's told he's got brain cancer, and he passes away 4 years later. He has a young daughter. Um, I believe she was born in 2009. I could be wrong on that date, but so that
That
would
sounds
mean
right.
that she's 10 or 11 years old, right? I mean, can you imagine that? You're diagnosed with brain cancer a year into retirement, and you don't get to enjoy any of those things with your family. I think, but you have to remember, I mean, they're not just musicians, they're people. Musicians and celebrities are human. So I think that really probably made me the most sad about the entire situation because, again, I mean, things happen, people pass. I mean, I lost a friend in a car accident. He was 50 something years old. It's way too young. Even 67, Neil, way too young. But tragedies happen, things happen, but it's just that it's time that he probably wasn't able to spend with his family or enjoy retirement and all that. That just really makes me probably the most sad about the entire situation, you know.
Yeah.
But,
But
Oh yeah.
if I can offer a segue, I guess, into what's the second part of our discussion here.
yeah, please.
Um, I'm sort of on the opposite spectrum from you, Ryan. I listen to all kinds of different music all the time. Um, jazz, blues, folk, um, like even some heavy metal sprinkled in there. It's my brother's influence, the Iron Maiden, that kind of stuff. Um, and I listen to a lot of songs. Um, I've yet to discover a lyricist and a poet who is able to spin meanings into song form as perfectly as Neil did. I mean, it's writing lyrics and writing songs is something that I've tried. It's not easy. It's really difficult.
You
Okay.
described that really well, by the way, because I was thinking
Yeah.
the same thing. I
It's
just didn't
it's
know how to
so
say it.
it's so hard to tap into your own emotions or to tap into your observations about the world and then translate that into music because music is its own language. Okay, it has its own timing, it has its own ways that things that sound better than others, and it's almost like you're a language translator in that sense because you're taking things from one form and putting them into the other. And I mean, we could sit here for hours and name just lines, two or three words that you know make a song and touch us on a deeper level and make us think about so many other things. And Neil was the best at that. I don't think there will ever be anybody as long as I'm around listening to music that comes close to achieving the success that the band did certainly, but that he did as a lyricist personally, and for as long as he did.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. You know, when I got into Rush back in the early 80s, oddly, I got into it because a friend of mine in school played Tom Sawyer, and I was blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, you know, the drumming is amazing, the musicianship is amazing. And then he said, it's only three dudes. And I'm like, I was even further blown away. What? So I spent a really long time focusing a ton just on his drumming, on Neil's drumming, because I was like, I'm with being a drummer, I was, you know, drawn to that a lot. And I knew all the words to the songs, but I didn't like really think about them. I didn't think about them and analyze them, and, you know, and just like kind of dive deeper into them until a little bit later, probably, you know, when I was in college. And then I really started to look at that. So this is my long story way of saying, yeah, once I did that, you know, Matt, I completely agree with you. I mean, there's so many different, you know, meanings and so many emotions that his lyrics stir up for me, and not just emotions like, oh, this is going to make me cry kind of emotions, but
Mm.
you know, just various, you know, emotions, you know, anything from, you know, feeling, you know, powerful, like one little victory, like, you know, coming back from something that was, you know, hard, to feeling like really sad, like, you know, the garden kind of almost always makes me weep a little bit, you know, or to think about, you know, the lyrics in Entre Nous about, you know, ships passing, you know, we are islands to each other, and, you know, things like that. You know, just I think the way that he weaved the words was just incredible.
And
And you're right. Like I went through a period in high school where I listened to, this was probably for like almost a year. The only bands I listened to was Iron Maiden, Jethro Tull, and Rush.
that's a pretty good list.
That is.
I think it's great.
Jethro,
Um,
yeah.
But and the other thing about it
I'll
is
put on some Maiden every once in a while. I like
It's
Iron
good
Maiden
stuff.
too. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
to
Great
sort of
stuff.
piggyback off that, and I hope I'm not taking up too much time. I'll let
No,
other
go
people
ahead.
No,
talk
you're good.
here.
You're good.
It says a lot if, you know, forget about, you know, talking about an emotional attachment. To me, it says a lot if a song can, after it's done playing, if it can make me sit down and think. You know what I mean? I
Mhm.
had that a lot with
Mm-hmm.
Rush, where the song is over and I sat down and I thought about it. You know, I had it with certainly 2112 being the obvious choice. Natural Science was a big one for me. You know, that line, you know, the most endangered species, the honest
Mhm.
man, like, that's like, whoa. Like, he just brought it into, you know,
Whole new
modern life.
territory there.
Is
Yeah.
that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It kind of like blew it open at the end there, and I was like, holy shit. Like, you know, just sitting there after the song was done thinking. And, you know, not too many, you
Yeah.
know, forms of entertainment can be entertaining as Rush is, and then have you sit down and think. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I always say that there's literally a Rush song for every
Mm.
mood, for every emotion.
Mhm.
Like you can put Rush on at any point, and it will make you most of the time feel better, right? I mean, or you know whatever you're looking for, there's a Rush song for it, and I think that's Neil. I mean that's Neil's ability to basically. I mean he is a poet. He's to the you know to a T, and of course Alex and Getty, and then the drumming, Neil's drumming on top of that is what makes Rush Rush. But I think, yeah, someone said it earlier, but Rush really took off when Neil joined, and those lyrics, I mean, other than maybe virtuality, stand the test of time. You know, um,
Yeah, you're right.
so
And that's thanks to the
Great early
vastness of the
90s.
catalog that you can have a
Mm-hmm.
Rush
right,
song for every moment. I mean, Jim mentions Jethro Tull. There's been about 55 guys in that band. You know what I mean? From when they
Yeah.
Yeah.
started in the late 60s through, and I
Great
think
musicians, but yeah,
Ian Anderson's
you're
still
right.
going out with a band that he's calling
Oh,
Jethro Tull,
yeah.
which obviously is his right to do
It's
and all
his,
that.
yep.
And it's got to be pretty good, and he
Oh,
wouldn't
for sure.
hire bad musicians. But at the same time, the same three guys for 40 years.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense.
Yeah,
I mean, the fact that they just didn't kill each other alone is an achievement.
Yeah, I
let
know.
alone they made such great music. So that's to me what makes Rush the most unique rock band in that sense. Because if you think of all the other rock bands, they all got, you know, once they made it big or
Yeah.
even beforehand, you know, they had issues with substances or they had issues with clashing personalities. You know, I write the songs, like, you know, I'm the lead singer, you know, none of that. You know, they had, you know, the most contentious moment was probably when Alex was like, I want less keyboards. And Geddy was like, okay, we can do
Yeah.
less keyboards. Like that's how they did. They were friends. And
Yeah.
that comes through in the music because you can tell. I mean, there's a lot of times where I'm listening to Rush, even in the studio. I'm like, damn, they must have been having a great time playing that song. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
Spirit of Radio is a good one for that. I always think they must have
Mhm.
had such a great time recording that song.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure they did, and that's a good point because somebody actually, I forget who it was. Somebody was texting me about, we were talking about Rush, and I was like, well, you know, they were the same three guys were together for 40 years. And he said, well, is that longer than any other band? It's actually not. Like if you look at a band like Tower of Power, they've been together for about 50 years. But there's been, just like you said with Jethro Tull, there's been different musicians that have come in and out of that group, you know, but still keeping like the same core, like whatever it is who started the group. But another great group too, Tower of Power. You know, but Rush has been the same three guys. And I think when Neil joined, this is just my view at least, right? When Neil joined, it started to move the needle of Rush to where Rush was going to be. It's like his joining kind of was the start of that journey. Right.
And Geddy talks about that in the documentary that like he pushed them.
Yeah.
He wasn't
And-
just there to keep time.
Yeah. And what's funny is that with, and I've said this before, like with almost every single album, they changed their sound a little bit. And I'm not talking like, you know, they're a rock band, they're a new wave band, they're a ska band, not that kind of thing, right? But they tweak things a little bit to keep up with the times. So they're keep moving in that journey, and they never arrived at a sound and said, you know what, now the next 5 albums are going to be just this. That never happened. So when Neil says the point of a journey is not to arrive, I think it's true with the band too. They just kind of kept evolving with all three of them, you know, giving the input and their artistic impressions and their desires. So it's, I think it was great. And I think, I mean, all three of them have, you know, put so much and contributed so much, you know, to the band that it wouldn't have been Rush as we know it if not for those three.
Yeah. Can we just talk about real quick, and this is probably more so the first segment, but I think we should discuss this as a group, emotions wise. So, like when I found out, the first person I texted was my mother. We went to all the Rush shows together, and her reply was, it feels like you lost a friend or a brother or whatever, you know, someone. It feels like you lost someone that you were really close to. So yeah, granted, I don't get sad over celebrities or anything like that. I mean, we lost Eddie Van Halen this past year too. But two things I want to say, and the first thing I'll say is the outpouring of love for Neil got SiriusXM to put a Rush tribute channel on for like a month and a half. And all I'm going to say is, don't get me wrong, I like Van Halen, but Van Halen got a tribute channel and it was not for a month and a half. And I think that's just the dedication of Rush fans, how much we love Rush and how passionate we are about Rush, just to put that into perspective. But I think the second thing is here, I just want to talk about like how it felt like it. And again, I'm sure Neil would cringe at this, and it was a comparable feeling to losing a family member or losing a friend to me. Now, granted,
Mhm.
I've been fortunate enough. I still have all four of my grandparents currently, so I haven't lost anyone that I'm really truly close to. But I did lose a friend in I think summer of 2016. My golfing buddy, as I mentioned, he was in his mid 50s. He was a Rush fan. He was killed in a car accident, so it was instant. You know, it wasn't some cancer build up over time or whatever. That it was the same type of feeling for me. The feeling of losing him. I was told I worked with him. I was told at work when he was killed in an automobile accident. It was the same emptiness type feeling sitting at my desk for both my friend and for Neil. So that's why it was a comparable feeling to me of losing a friend, because that's the only thing that I have to compare it to. Um, but I mean, I know I'm not the only person who felt that way, because we had a lot of people comment on posts going forward
Mhm.
that it truly felt like you lost someone you were close to, even though we've never met Neil. And you know, if I ever met Neil, I would just shake his hand and say hello, nice to meet you, type of thing. Because we all know how he is, being like an introvert. Um, but it truly felt like you lost someone that was a friend. I mean, did anybody else feel that way? Can we just discuss this
Yeah,
quick?
I was about to say that. So like that was an interesting observation I had that day. I just got like a ton of messages from all sorts of friends and family saying, "I am sorry for your loss," and I'm like,
Yeah,
"What?"
right.
Yeah, that was like I felt that was weird at first, and I really started thinking about that. It's like, I guess they do have a sort of point, because I think the way I sort of view life is in large part due to Neil's lyrics, and there was something else I was going to say as well, but like. And like another common thing I got was, "You're the first person I thought about." I'm like, really?
I got
So
Yeah.
that
many
Yeah,
of
that too.
those. Mhm.
yeah. But no, yeah, I completely agree with that. Like,
I wish I had
yeah,
some of the texts that I got from people
yeah.
like that we could
I mean,
show, but
Mm,
it
I
was one of
mean,
those things where, oh, I'm sorry to cut you off.
no, you're fine. I was done.
Where
I
my
think.
dad, my brother, and I each got, texts, Facebook messages, people offering their condolences to us. And it felt a little weird because it's like,
mhm.
why am I accepting condolences for this
Right.
guy who I never met?
Yeah.
Like, oh, we knew that you guys loved Rush. And it's like, yeah, and it's not that we love them any less now that this happened, but it was kind of interesting to see how many people, who you didn't think, you lost contact with, or you fell out of touch with them,
Right.
remembered that you liked Rush, and then thought
People
enough
years and years and years
to
ago
pick up
messaged
their
me.
phone and reach out to you.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
think
had
many. I'm sorry. You were gonna say, Jim?
no. Go ahead, Alex.
Oh, okay. I never met the man, but I did get to meet Getty at the very least, and in my very brief time, I got to talk to him for a little bit. All I could really say to him was I just thanked him for all the things that they had done to contribute to a positive impact on my life, and I know that definitely
Yeah.
put a smile on Getty's face. And then I got a fist bump out of that, and he said something like, "Thanks, man.
Nice.
That I appreciate that," or something like that.
Yeah.
Getty was doing fist bumps before it
Um,
was the right thing to do during a
Performance
pandemic.
thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
he was years
But
ahead of his time.
yeah.
To add on to just with Getty, like we were receiving condolences because obviously how it affected us, but like think about how it
Mhm.
affected them. Think about
Yeah.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
totally.
what
Oh, yeah.
they knew, what we didn't know for
Yeah.
3 years,
Yep.
and they kept it private, and they kept it private just like Neil would have wanted. But yeah, just like
Yeah.
us in 2018. Imagine us like hoping, oh, maybe they'll get, but the answer was already, they already knew. So
Yeah.
it's
I
And
really
think that
interesting.
just led to the shock of it too, that we
Yes.
didn't know. I mean, like
Mhm.
if you know that your favorite musician or your hero or whatever has cancer or has a heart problem or whatever it may be, you can prepare for that in a way,
Yeah.
or a grandparent has
Yeah.
something or other. You
Kind of
can
like what
you
Ozzy
can,
Osbourne's going throh right now.
yeah, like you
Yeah.
can prepare
Yeah.
for. Well, Ozzy Osbourne should have been dead however many years ago. I'm surprised he's lived this long. He's going to live forever. Um, he's great in concert, by the way, even at this age. But it's type of thing where you can prepare for that. Nobody was prepared for this. Nobody even knew
Yeah.
about it fan wise, right?
Yeah.
So I
And
think that added not only to the shock, but to the sadness and
mhm.
Yeah.
just the overall feeling of losing
But,
like someone you were close to. It like that was the feeling, the comparable
yeah.
feeling.
Yeah.
But
And
Jim had some.
he asked, I think, what happened just after reading articles and things, he asked his close friends, keep this quiet. There's a select group of people who know about it. And he asked his friends to keep it quiet, and reading like the letter that John Good or Don, John Good is president of Drum Workshop Drums, and Don Perry, who used to play drums with Jeff Lotto. Don is a fantastic player. They were like, it was so hard to keep it quiet, but they wanted to respect Neil's wishes, which speaks of the integrity of those gentlemen,
Mm-hmm.
that they didn't say anything, and I can imagine, how hard that is, because they probably just like need to talk about it, because it's holed up inside of someone that they are true friends with, not just admire them as an artist, but a friend. That's
I
gotta
think
be really tough.
What was I going to say? I mean, just the fact that Neil being such a private person to begin with, he always, you'll hear him say in documentaries, like, I want to be just a guy. Like if someone meets me, if we're on our motorcycles traveling and someone meets me, he doesn't want to be Neil, the drummer of Rush. He wants to be just a
Mhm.
guy. Like, just treat me as a guy that you
Yeah,
just met at a
some
pit
dude.
stop or a rest stop, right?
Right.
I think, this is just my interpretation of it, but he when he was battling brain cancer, that's what he still wanted to be, just a guy. He wanted the privacy, because any bit of media, then
Oh, yeah.
it just opens up the floodgates, right? So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I think it's super impressive that it was able to be kept to that extent, but um I think it was fitting. I think it was
Mhm.
fitting based
Yeah.
on everything
Yeah.
he's
For
told
sure.
us about him personally, his personality and things like that. So I think it was
So,
just
yeah.
I think it was done the right way, as everything else is with Rush.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
does
Yeah.
anybody else have any final things they might want to say?
Well, I just want to say something that's kind of a little bit fun, maybe.
Sure.
So that
Sure.
I never got to meet Neil. And
Mhm.
when I was a little kid in the early 80s, right, I would, if I met him, I would have been like falling all over myself going, oh my gosh, look at this guy. He's, such a great, drum god kind of thing, right? As I got older, if I ever met him, all I would want to do is shake his hand and say, "Ah, thank you for the inspiration," because he inspired me as a drummer and as an artist. And just like we were talking about, like his lyrics and stuff like that, just, listening to his lyrics and, read and thinking about them after a song is over. I mean, all that stays with me. But the closest I ever got to meet him was I went to a book signing by Kevin J. Anderson, who's a science fiction
Mhm.
um, author. And I don't know if anybody has read the Dune series. When after Frank Herbert passed away, Brian Herbert, who's Frank Herbert's son, and Kevin J. Anderson wrote a whole bunch more Dune books as part of the full series, the full canon. And I asked Kevin J. Anderson only one thing about the book, and then for the rest of the time during the book signing, which was only about like probably 4 minutes, right? We talked about Rush, because he was a personal friend of Neil's, and it was Kevin J. Anderson and Neil who together wrote the Clockwork Angels novel. So we talked about Rush and, what Kevin likes to listen to, and he's got to go to concerts and sit like, side stage, like on the stage kind of thing. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And it was so exciting to talk to somebody about, the band that we both loved. And this was long before that I, met all of you guys too. So that was the closest I ever got to meeting Neil.
Yeah.
Right.
That's fair.
which was still super fun to talk to such a
Sure.
such a great author about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all right. Anybody else? Anybody else have
mean,
any?
I think the last thing that I have to say that I want to say is that, you know, through everything that I've been through and that we've all been through this year, you know, the music's still there. If you
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
find yourself down, if you find yourself lost, throw the music on. It could help.
Yeah.
And it probably will help.
Yeah,
Sure,
and I was
sure.
about to say, I guess in conclusion for me, anyway, even though Neil Peart's died, I don't believe he is truly gone. To Matt's point, like the music is still there, and his words will always speak to us, no matter what point in history.
sure. For me, I mean, like when the band was done, or, we thought they were done in 2015. To me, the three members, the three guys, the three humans of the band, I kind of distanced myself from to an extent because there was no more live touring, so you don't actually get to see them, right?
Mhm.
This might sound weird, but I don't really know how else to word it. But the music is still there, right? So I feel like had Neil passed immediately, it would have felt even worse than it did now. But the fact that I personally kind of distanced myself from, because you don't get media from them, or you get minimal media from them. You don't. There's no shows to go to. You don't see Alex, Getty, and Neil at all. It's just the music, right? So there's no
Mhm.
interviews about a new album. There's no interviews about a new tour. There's no things like that. Um, so to me, Rush was done in 2015, but I still had the music. I don't really know where I was going with this, but that's just kind of how, like, I don't know. It's just kind of, I tried because I knew that there was an end. So I kind of tried to distance myself because we always kind of felt that connection to the band. Like you don't feel for other bands, I guess. But I mean, the whole thing, super sad, obviously.
Oh,
And I think, rest in peace to our beloved, the greatest drummer that has ever lived, Neil Peart. Um, Guys, thanks for joining us on this. Anyone that wants to come on and talk Rush, feel free to shoot us an email or a direct message. Um, and we'll talk about other things relating to Rush. So thanks, guys. Have a
Thank
great
you.
one.